Hey everybody, this is Andrew here at Tower. Today we're going to be talking about fat tire electric bikes. You may have seen them all over the market. You might be shopping for an electric bike. You keep seeing these bikes with these big giant fat tires that you're not used to seeing on regular bicycles. These fat tires have become very popular across the e-bike industry. Lots of bikes like this Super 73 here have been popping up all over the market. It seems like every brand is starting to come out with their own version of these 20 by 4.0 or 26 by 4.0 fat tires. Now, what's the advantage of these tires? Why do they put them on here? There's a few reasons why they would put these big fat tires onto these bikes. And there's two main reasons. One of them is, first of all, a lot of these e-bikes will come fully rigid, like the Super 73. This is a fully rigid frame. There's no suspension on it. Same thing with this electric folding bike over here. Everything's full rigid, no suspension. So what a lot of brands will do is they'll put these 20 by 4.0 tires on there because they give the bike a little more of a plush feel. These fat tires typically don't run at very high pressures. Most of them have a max pressure of about 20 to 30 PSI. Now 20 to 30 PSI may seem like a lot, but in the grand scheme of bike tires, it's actually pretty low. Now one of the things with that lower tire pressure you'll find is that tire kind of squishes out a little bit more on the street, and when you go over bumps, it kind of compresses a little bit more. So that kind of acts as a pseudo substitute for suspension. You're riding it, it gives you a little more of a plush feel. So a replacement for suspension is one of the main reasons that a lot of brands will put the fat tires on the bikes. The other reason that they'll put fat tires on the bikes, it's a little more simple, and that's just they look cool. They look mean, they look sturdy. You look at a bike, you're like, man, that's a cool looking bike. I like those fat tires. Those look like they can roll over anything. Aesthetics play a huge part. You look at the pictures, that's what gets you excited about a bike. However, are they worth it? Do they give you advantages like we're looking for? And they do have some drawbacks to them. It's not all positives here. I would say one of the big negatives on these particular tires are because they run at that lower tire pressure, they are a little bit more prone to flats. The lower your tire pressure, yeah, it will make your ride a little comfier, but things can stick into your tire a lot easier. One of the other things is with that lower tire pressure, you're a little more susceptible to pinch flat. Well, what is a pinch flat? That's when you're riding and you hit a bump and the tire compresses, but it compresses so much that it pinches the tube underneath with the rim and punctures that tube, making it go flat. With these fatter tires, depending on the bump or the drop size, you may end up pinching that tube. One of the other things with the fat tire, because there is a lot more surface area coming in contact with the street or ground, it's a lot more surface area that could potentially get a puncture. So flats on these guys can tend to pop up a little more frequently than a regular bike tire. And to add on to that, as sort of another drawback to the 20 by 4 or 26 by 4 tires and tubes, is that to get them replaced is rather pricey and a little difficult to do. So your usual bike tube will usually cost you somewhere between about $5 to $9, depending on quality, size, peculiarity. But with these 20 by 4 tubes for just a basic, not extra thick, not sealant tube, just a basic tube, it's usually gonna run you anywhere from 20 to 25 bucks per tube. So imagine you hit 2 flats on your bike, it's about 50 bucks right there just for the tubes. And on top of that, they are a little expensive, but they're also a little bit hard to find. Both, bike shops, it's a little tough to stock them. They're peculiar size, so not a lot of bike shops will have a huge stock of them. So locating them can be difficult, and then once you do locate them, they can be a little expensive. So those are some of the pros and cons of, a fat tire. Well, let's check some out. So we got some stuff here. So like right here, for example, I have a 26 by 4.0 tire. Now you can see, if we look inside, you can see it's got a lot of surface area in there. All of that surface area, that's potentially spots that you could get a flat or a puncture. Now you can also see that tread. That's a lot of tread, that's a lot of contact coming with the street and ground. With these big tires, one of the other negatives is they can be a little bit tough to install compared to your normal tire. So this particular tire that I'm holding, as you can see, is it's not wiggly a whole bunch. This is a pretty stiff tire, so getting this guy slotted on can be a bit difficult, especially with the bigger sizes. On a 20 by 4 tire that's a little bit looser fitting on there, it's still pretty difficult to get a flat change, because one of the things you end up happening is as you air it up, certain sides will be pushed in, certain sides will be, shimmied out. And getting that tire seated perfectly all the way around on these fat tires can be a little difficult. You usually end up airing it up, airing it down until everything's perfectly balanced and good to go. We can also look here, we have some of these tubes. So this is a 20 by 4 tube we can see right here, which is, as you can see, a little bit bigger than your usual tube. And then here I have the monstrous 26 by 4 tube. This one's a very big one here. And one of the things that's also interesting is if we look here, you see this box, this has some air in it, and you can see it kind of bulbs out here and doesn't expand all the way. So this is very common. The bigger you get with a tube size is right around the valve, it won't expand out as much as it should. And that comes into play when it comes to puncture resistant tubes. You may have like a 26-inch bike at home that you're used to riding around and you're like, oh, I throw some thick tubes in there to make this extra puncture resistant. I'll just do that with this bike. Now, one of the things with these fatter tubes is because of that activity right around the valve where it doesn't want to fill out all the way because it's extra reinforced at the valve, the bigger you go with that tube, you can't do the thicker tubes, because the thicker tubes, that spot's more and more and more pronounced. So like on a 4.0, if you had a thick tube, there would be a big pocket of space where there would be absolutely zero tube with the tire. That's one, going to make it an uncomfortable ride, and two, make it way more prone to punctures or tears at that individual spot. Now there is an interesting product out on the market called Tannus Liners. I happen to have one here. Check it out. Now, these liners, they are foam inserts. So you may know like a tire liner on your regular bike, a little thickness that just goes right between the tube and the tire, just a little extra that a puncture would have to go through. These Tannus liners are like that, but kicked up to 11. They're way thicker. I'd say where a tire liner holds about that much, the Tannus is about that much of protective material. So as far as punctures go, it definitely gives you a lot more puncture protection than your normal tire liner. However, it's not all good to go. So one, these Tannus liners, we've installed a lot of them here at our Tower Electric Bike Repair Shop. They're a lot of work to install. They're a little bit of time, a lot of positioning, getting everything just right. There's a bit of cutting. So it's definitely a time-consuming process whenever you do have to change a flat. Now, one of the other positives to these Tannus liners, however, is because it takes up so much space inside that tire, you actually end up using a smaller tube than you normally would. So while you normally use like a 20 by 3.5 to 4.0 on one of these, if you were to install one of the Tannus liners, you would install like a 2.125 tube, which is much, much, much easier to find, much easier to work with. So that is a plus there. However, once the Tannus liners are installed and ready to go, it does take away a lot of the plushness of the fat tires, which, a lot of people go for the fat tires for that plush feel. When you install the Tannus liner, definitely makes it a much harder, slightly harsher ride. Will be more puncture resistant, but it will definitely change your ride feel. So definitely something to be aware of. What are some popular tire brands you'll see with the fat tires? One of the ones you'll see a lot on a lot of direct-to-consumer electric bicycles is a Chinese brand called Chaoyang, usually the Dino Skin model. They're fine tires. I'd say they're okay quality. There's decent puncture protection. It's not a super top-of-the-line tire. It's not going to give you tippy top-of-the-line performance, but it's adequate. Another popular one you'll see on a lot of fat tires is you'll see Kenda. Kenda makes a lot of great products. Their tires are really solid. Unfortunately, you'll find that 20 by 4 tires and 26 by 4 tires are very, very pricey, usually around 60 to 80 per tire, depending on, tread, color, that sort of stuff. So again, another thing to be aware of down the line is, just parts are expensive. So kind of brings us to a conclusion here, with our fat tire talk. What do we think here? I'm personally not a big fan of fat tires. I think they're a lot of work for not a lot of improvement. I think they tend to lose speed a lot quicker, with that big surface area on the street. Second you take your hand off the throttle or the assist, you're definitely going to feel yourself slow down. So I'm not a big fan of them. Some other people here at Tower, they're big fans of them. They think they look awesome, that they ride cool. So at the end of the day, you just have to look at the pros and cons yourself and decide, if fat tires are the right kind of e-bike for you. So thanks for joining us on our talk about fat tire e-bikes. I hope you have a great day.